That was a gift of a handball.
So 2-1 it would finish. It's a winning start for Real Madrid in the Champions League. Stuart Robson is joining us now, but we have to start with that penalty. While we're watching the game, Craig, you called it ridiculous, the decision.
Well, a defender is, in the art of defending, has to make a challenge. If a player's about to shoot, a player's about to score. And the act of making that challenge, you generally have to, if you don't have to go to ground, it's great, but a lot of times you have to go to ground. And in doing so, his arm was coming down. Now, if he'd come down and swatted the ball away, then I don't have an issue with it. But he basically was falling onto the ball. And what we get so frustrated when we see defenders running out to the ball with their hands behind the back, right? When people are crossing balls into the box. This kind of decision is going to make... Unless we put their arms in a straitjacket, unless they tuck them up here, the arm is always going to be there because it's natural when you're making a challenge. And I just have a problem with something that there was absolutely no intent in making a challenge being given as a penalty kick in the favour of a big team.
And to further the point, there's a deflection ahead of the touch of the arm. When he's making the challenge, he gets a foot on the ball as Vini's trying to cut to the inside. So he's made a challenge. In making the challenge, he's gone down to ground, as Craig just pointed out, does make contact with the ball, and the fact that he actually does make contact with the ball now somehow is punished by the fact that it jumps or the ball bounces right to his arm, which, what can he do with it? Now, Craig just mentioned straitjacket. The other option is sawing the arm off. You can't do either one of those things. You're really limiting the way that defenders go about defending. What else was he supposed to do? He made a challenge, tried to win the ball, got a touch on the ball pops up, hits him in the arm, and now that's a penalty. I just don't see.
We're really sorry, before Stuart has his opinion, we're really sanitising, and also, nobody knows the handball law, inside out. They do not. And by the looks of what we're seeing the start of this season, they are still making it up. But we are sanitising the game to an extent where we're saying, you know, what Mbappe does is a skill. What great players do in the opposing penalty area is a skill. But guess what? So is defending. So is making a great challenge in the box. That's also a skill. And are we saying we're taking that, we're going to pretty much take that away because of the fear that you fall on the ball and it touches your arm and you're not even stopping a goal-scoring opportunity? That ball is not travelling towards goal. It is just basically bobbling around. There's no Real Madrid player around to put that in the back of the net. That's sanitising the game. There has to be an understanding from referees about how players act and how players make a challenge and what effect that challenge could have on your body and the ball position. Clearly, these officials do not have that.
Are you with the boys, Robbo?
Absolutely. I mean, should never have been a penalty. And when you start to listen to what people are saying about why it was a penalty, we had on English TV, they were talking about you're allowed to put your arm down to break your fall, but his arm wasn't going down to break the fall; it was off the ground. It's complete rubbish. It's an accident. There's nothing he can do about it. As Ali just said, it ricocheted off his foot, probably off his hip, back onto his hand. It should never have been given as a handball. It was a terrible decision, and in the end, a match-losing decision.
So what is a natural position as a defender then supposed to be if you're going for a sliding tackle here?
Where his arm was. It's there. I mean, Stevie Nicol, as a top-class, world-class renowned defender in his day, right back, left back, play him anywhere you want, pretty much, stands there and basically self-combobulates at defenders that put their hands behind their back. But you have to understand why they're doing that. Because it's the fear and the worry that officials like this are going to give the most ludicrous penalty decisions against them. And they don't want to be the player that causes that. Now, again, I go back to that point. We are just completely over the top now with this decision-making. We have gone the full spectrum. Nobody knows the handball unless it actually hits somebody with their arm up here and they're making themselves bigger. You're making yourself bigger, that's a penalty kick. You're making a challenge and you're falling on the ball. come on. This is referees who have never made that kind of challenge. They've never had to. They've probably never played the game. They've never made that challenge, and they don't understand what it takes to be in that position.
Robbo, what did you make of Real Madrid's performance overall?
The first 15, 20 minutes, I thought they played at a good tempo. They were on the front foot. They were trying to win the ball back in good areas. They created chances, didn't take them all. And then suddenly Marseille started to play around their pressure and they looked far too open. I mean, some of Marseille looked a bit like the Brighton side when De Zerbi was manager there, when they played into midfield, got it out to the fullbacks, played around pressure. And suddenly Real Madrid was struggling. Goulet obviously got caught on the ball for the goal. And for 20, 30 minutes, it was an even match. And the game changed with the sending off of Carvajal, because at that point Marseille should have been in control, should have gone on and dominated, but it was the other way round. In the end, Real Madrid, with the system they played when they made the substitution, Raul Asensio came on, and they actually played better in the last 15, 20 minutes. They had more control of the game than they did for the previous 30. So I wouldn't say it was an outstanding performance. They had a good start and a good finish, but some of the middle areas, they weren't good defensively, I didn't think.
And that was idiotic from him, wasn't it, Carvajal?
Especially after you've just lost Trent.
He's come off with a hamstring injury. Might be 2 weeks, might be 3, might be 6, might be 8. He doesn't know. And he is, arguably, Carvajal, that is, the starting fullback. Trent's the one that's getting a bit of game time here and there. And he knows better. He's, one of the best in the business. He, as Ali said, he can have no complaints. So that's put his manager in a predicament now. Probably having to put Fede Valverde back out there or something like that. I don't know what the hell they're going to do, but that was just utterly stupid from him, and he can have no complaints.
Vini Jr was left out of the starting 11. Is that rotation or a message?
Well, I thought that we'd already sent a message to Vini Jr. I thought that already happened earlier in the season. He was benched earlier in the season when Rodrigo played, and then Vini Jr. came off the bench and actually had an impact late in the match against Oviedo, and I think we're all good. Or maybe we're not. Maybe Vini's not getting the message from Xabi Alonso. Maybe there is some disappointment from the performance against Real Sociedad, which we highlighted how good Mbappe had been against Real Sociedad. But as we are talking about how good Mbappe had been against Real Sociedad, we also had to mention Vini, on the other hand, not so much. Maybe it's a continuation of that, and maybe there's a conversation to be had, or maybe it's a conversation that it's already happened. The truth is that it seems like Xabi Alonso is saying to Vini Jr., you're not always a starter, you're not a guaranteed starter. Even if it is a Champions League night that is supposed to be reserved for El Once de Gala, the best 11 for Real Madrid, which you would think Vini Jr. would be part of that, apparently not. So he better get going. It's all I would say to Vini Jr. You better get going, and you better have performances, consistent performances, and do the things that you're being asked to do, which is I think, what's happening here. That there is a role to be filled by Vini Jr. that includes pressing the ball. And if he doesn't do it, which he didn't do against Real Sociedad consistently, then Xabi Alonso is saying, I'll find somebody else who will do it, who's willing to do it. And we have players who can do the job. Here comes Rodrigo. This is your opportunity. Now, you also have to ask the question, does Rodrigo take advantage of the opportunity? Well, not so much. And so I don't know that there's a straightforward answer for Xabi Alonso. The best version of Vini Jr. should be starting for Real Madrid, but we're yet to see that with any consistency in the beginning of the season.
Season before last, him and Bellingham in particular, both have lost form. Bellingham's been out injured, just coming back. Vinicius was first in the team sheet. It was him, and then it was everybody else. He was the man. Before Mbappe arrived, he was the man. And he was playing great. Last year he did not. Not on his own, but as a big star, whinging and moaning about the Ballon d'Or, about, trophies for me, not the team. It's all about me. And it wasn't. He didn't win it. And that affected him. And I think Alonso is saying, and it's been quite clear, show me. Show me that you want it. Show me that you want to get back to being that guy. Show me you can be that guy. And if you don't, here's a seat next to me. And I'll bring Rodrigo in, who was out of favour and who looked as if he was out of the club in the summer. And I think it's good management in a sense where Xabi Alonso's come in, he's managed to get good enough results, but he's laid a marker down. Apart from Mbappe, he's not needed to drop Mbappe because he's been the best player. But all the rest of them, pretty much. Alexander-Arnold comes in as a big signing. Yeah, Carvajal's fit. Wait your turn. Sending a message to big players, some of them. You're not performing for me. I will put you on the bench. And that was one of the question marks we had about Alonso coming in. How would he go about making that kind of statement, and would he even attempt it? Well, I think we've clearly got our answer. He's going to do it his way or the highway. And I think that's the correct way to go about it, because ultimately at Real Madrid, you're getting fired. At some point, you are getting fired. And when that day comes around, you want to look at yourself and say, do you know what? I made these big decisions. I did what was right at the time. And at the moment, Vinicius Jr. is feeling the pain of Alonso putting a marker down.
And if Xabi Alonso is going to do things his way, which I assume is what you would want to do as a manager coming into Real Madrid, and he has the equity and the leeway to do that because of who he was within Real Madrid, one of the things that he has to figure out is that he cannot play with a midfield three. Stewie just mentioned how open they are through that area of the field. And so you need an extra number there. Now, he's tried it, and he's hell-bent on making Arda Güler some sort of deep-line midfielder, which he is not. And Tchouaméni gets himself out of position because he tries to win balls that he's never going to win. And so then that leaves a whole lot of Valverde running around, trying to cover a lot of space. When Marseille put together 3 and 4 passes today, they broke through that midfield like they weren't even there. And so then you expose what's going on in the back line. Now, what's going on in the back line is that Militao, who was very good against Real Sociedad, today was getting spun around by Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Let me remind you, Aubameyang is 36 years old. That front three of Marseille that was essentially Tim Weah, Aubameyang, and Mason Greenwood, when they got into open spaces, which they were able to do because, as I said before, there's a lot of space through the midfield of Real Madrid, they were creating problems. And they had opportunities. Aubameyang should have scored. Mason Greenwood had an opportunity late in which Courtois is having to come up with a save. Tim Weah got himself a goal. It's Marseille we're talking about at home, and yet, if you look at the totality of the game and the balance of the game, as many opportunities as Real Madrid had, Marseille had their chances as well. They need a fourth midfielder because these three that are playing in those positions right now are not going to be able to cover the space consistently.
Going back to the Vini Jr. point, Robbo, were you surprised not to see him in the 11?
Not particularly, because I think, as the chaps have just said, Xabi Alonso, I don't think's a great fan of his at the moment. He wants him to do things that at the moment he doesn't do particularly well, which is close the ball down, press the ball. And he also wants him to make the right decisions on the ball, when to run with it, when to pass it, when to play little 1-2s. Now, he's had the licence to do what he wants to do for a couple of years. Now Xabi Alonso wants him to be more disciplined. And that's a problem for the player, because he doesn't always play in a disciplined manner. And now he's lost a bit of confidence. And I think it's going to be a struggle for him this season, Vini Jr.
Let's go back to Kylian Mbappe. You said obviously he's not going to drop this player at the moment because he is the one who's delivering right now. He's got his 50th goal for Real Madrid tonight already.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking... Again, I think we talked about this. What day is it? Tuesday?
It's Tuesday.
Yesterday. Yesterday. It was a long weekend. Very long. We talked about it yesterday, that last year we can look at his numbers, and his numbers were actually very good, but I think Robbo's touched on this, having done a lot of the commentaries. His performances at times lacked the energy and the quality that we know he's got. And we discussed it yesterday, saying it looked like he had as big a player as he is, it looked like he had the weight of a poor Real Madrid side and the pressure of the crowd and the expectations on his back a little bit. You know, even the best carry that. But he looks as if even, you know, if you looked at him in tonight's game, even with that scissor kick at the start of the game, he's smiling, he's confident. He looks back to making good decisions in the final third again. Last year, for half the season last year, the first half of the season, he was not. If he was going through in goal, or if he had a couple of defenders, he was scuffing his shot, he was hitting defenders, he was over-hitting a pass. He looks as if he's past that now. He looks as if he's kind of puffing his chest out a little bit more. He's got his confidence. The Real Madrid fans are enjoying what they see from him. His numbers are good. And if he could get a little bit better support around him, I think there's no reason why he won't continue in that trajectory.
Far and away, Real Madrid's best player in the early part of the season. And if we go back to the struggles that you're mentioning, Craig, go back a year. A year ago, Kylian Mbappe was missing penalties for fun, including in Champions League, and including not taking penalties that he should have. Even a player like Kylian Mbappe, as any player can, you're going to go through some moments in which the confidence is not there, where perhaps you find a little bit of anxiety because you want to impress this person, that person, those people up there, your teammates. You want to be that guy that everybody thinks you're going to be. And when things don't happen naturally for you to begin with, then you start to press. And I think what happened with Kylian Mbappe is he was trying to do the job of 3 or 4 players instead of doing the things that he can do naturally. Now, far more settled, far more comfortable, far more confident. You're just seeing when he gets going, there is no stopping him. We saw that against Real Sociedad over the weekend, and we saw that today, in which he was the difference maker, which he's expected to be for Real Madrid. But when you're having Vini not playing at a high level or coming off the bench, Mastantuono, even though he gets some nice little touches here and there isn't a whole lot of final product. Rodrigo doesn't do a whole lot. Bellingham is not available. You start looking around, you kind of go, well, it's either Mbappe or it isn't right now for Real Madrid. And so far, so good this season.
When he was caught, I think 8 times, somebody will correct me. When he was caught all those times in the first Clásico that he played in offside, that was telling. And by the way, it was not a good Barcelona offside trap. It was the over-anxious, the over-eagerness, the sort of pressure and the will to, please the fans and win them over to get in there, that he was making those runs way too early. Didn't have to. The space was there, the ball was there. He could have held his run, he timed his runs. He didn't. And that kind of told me at the time that, for a player with that quality and that brain, that football brain, that he was overeager. That game's played again this weekend. He's maybe getting caught in the game once or twice, but he's not doing that. And that just said to me that he was almost trying too hard to get himself in there. And he's making those runs way too early. And of course, Barcelona were catching him offside for fun. We're not seeing that player, I don't think, this year. And that's a good news for Xabi Alonso because he needs him big time to step up because this team are far from perfect in various positions. So he's going to be needed to stay fit, scoring goals, and leading the line as the superstar that he is.
Yeah, it's looking like it's Mbappe's team right now, Robbo.
Yeah, I mean, Mbappe is doing everything right. And as I think Craig just said, when a player is playing well, when he's playing full of confidence, they play with a smile on their face. They're looking happy about what they're doing. And Mbappe's doing that at the moment, whereas, as Ali said last year, he's missing penalties against Liverpool and he looks like the world's on his shoulder. His confidence takes everything away from it. It makes you half a yard slower. It makes you make the wrong runs at times. You don't think about the game. At the moment, Mbappe looks, as he is, a top-class player, world-class player.
Yeah, absolutely. So Real Madrid off to a winning start in the Champions League and in La Liga this season. Can they keep it up on the weekend that's coming against Espanyol? That's Saturday's game, 9:45 a.m. Eastern. We'll also see Barcelona against Getafe on Sunday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. All of these games available on ESPN+. That was the fourth of Juve's goals. There was one just before it from Dusan Vlahovic.
There was another goal.
Believe us, there was. Juve have been scoring in both of their last games. But anyway, 4-4. This game finished, ended up being quite the game in the end. I mean, we always know we're going to get this type of performance from Dortmund, something that we might not have expected. But 4-4 it finished, and what we do see often with Dortmund is them giving up a lead, giving up an advantageous position.
This is the Borussia Dortmund special. It is who they are. Now, you don't believe me. You say that I may have some sort of agenda against Borussia Dortmund, which I don't, but you think I do. Okay, I do not. Go back to the first game of this season in Bundesliga against St. Pauli, where they were winning by 2 goals in the 85th minute. And what ended up happening? They gave up 2 late goals. Now, why do I bring that up? It's who they are. And so for as much as Niko Kovac has had a positive impact on this group, the one thing that he hasn't done, quite frankly, is be able to see out a result. For whatever reason, this team is unable to just get numbers behind the ball, take the possession into the attacking half, keep the pressure away from Gregor Kobel, and these defenders, when it's a time to actually make a challenge, they're unable to do so. That's just who they are. It's not me making it up, just statistically speaking. You watch this team play, as we do regularly, and no lead is safe with them. Now, if you are a neutral, as we are, it's fun to watch Borussia Dortmund play because it's always like this. It's always like this. It's always high scoring. It's always back and forth. It's always goals. It's the personality of Borussia Dortmund. Give credit to Juventus in coming back late, although I would say the defending from both was embarrassing at times. And the one question I would ask about Juventus, how is Dusan Vlahovic coming off the bench in this match? You watch him play in the second half today and you go, this guy is world class. Now, he's not always world class, but you see him today and you go, that is a top line striker. How is he coming off the bench in this team? Based upon the performance we saw in the second half, should be starting and should be scoring goals.
Yeah, he's definitely making a case for himself off the bench this season. Kenan Yıldız, one of the young players, making a difference for Juventus right now, though, Ale.
Yeah, and a player who had some momentum at the end of last season. And the important thing for him is that he's been able to carry that momentum into this season. In what was a somewhat of a reduced role last year, that he grew into that role, became a starter, and now in the early part of the season, he seems to be the guy that breaks everything open for Juventus. Now, he scored a great goal. Gregor Kobel made a great save also late in the match in which he deflects it off the post as well. And he just tells you that every time he touches the ball, he's able to find the right pass. But more importantly, he has that skill set. In 1v1 situation, in very tight spaces, he can create for himself, which this team sometimes needs. They have difficulties creating as a team, but he is the one that makes it happen for them more times than not.
OK, more German football coming up for you this weekend on ESPN Plus. You'll be able to see Dortmund back in action on Sunday against Wolfsburg, Bayern also against Hoffenheim on Saturday. All of the games, as always, available on ESPN Plus.
Trossard, who there was talk about potentially leaving in the summer, is a very good squad player for Arsenal. I know he won't like to hear that, but he always generally makes a difference coming off the bench, and did so again, digging that one out of his feet for a comfortable 2-0 win in the end. And I just always felt that it looked like a sort of match day one game to me. Arsenal gained, a little bit more control as the game went on. I always felt they had another gear or two, Arsenal. To be quite honest with you, couldn't quite get Eze into the game. Thought Gyökeres made some decent runs in the first half, particularly down the left-hand channel. But again, the service to him isn't great. I think there was a cross from Hurricane Timber in the first half that maybe he should have been a little bit more on his toes. He got there with a header, but he was on the stretch. But for Mikel Arteta, it's job done. 2 great substitutions, 3 good points. They're not the strongest team, Athletic Club, but they're a decent side, so it was not an easy place to go. And I thought it was a decent performance at best from Arsenal, and it looked to me as if they just did enough to get over the line.
Subs making a difference tonight then, Robbo?
Well, it was a difficult game for them at the start because I thought Athletic Club started well. They were very aggressive. They played 4-4-2. They said they were going to press the ball. And the spare player was Moreno in the midfield. But they never got the ball to him. And he's not the sort of player, if he does get the ball, that's going to open up defences with his passing. So it really worked for Athletic Club. They closed the ball down. They made it difficult. They were never going to open up Arsenal with clever football. It was about winning the ball back in good areas and playing from there. And as Craig just said, Arsenal, as the game wore on, they got more control of it. They found more space on the field. They kept on hitting big switches out to Madueke. And the substitutions were very good. They're not the substitutions you expect were going to change the game, but they did because Trossard, who we thought was going to play in the number 10 role, and Moreno was going to play up front. It was the other way around. Moreno came that little bit deeper, and Trossard played the centre forward. And Martinelli showed what good pace he's got. As Craig said, it wasn't a great performance, but it was good enough to be a competitive Athletic Club side.
Arteta won't care about the performance, surely. Getting off to a winning start.
No, Craig just mentioned decent. If you want to be even more optimistic and more positive, it's a mature performance from Arsenal in which they did what was necessary and what was asked of them in taking on what is a very hostile crowd and a crowd that is very emotional and high energy for their own club. But what needs to be said is that for Athletic Club Bilbao, when you see Nico Williams sitting on the stands, that's where the offense is. That's it. Everybody else just kind of hopefully maybe something they can create or get on the rebound or something. Iñaki Williams, as much hard work as he puts into whatever work he does in the final third, he just doesn't have the final product. Oyan Sanset gets himself in good positions, but not exactly a finisher. Berenguer got himself in a couple of positions, missed the opportunities. And there is nothing much more than that from Athletic Club. So if you're Arsenal, while it is a high energy crowd and high intensity crowd, if you just go in there and start knocking the ball around, which they did with some personality, with some maturity, then you just have to find enough productivity in the attack. And I think it's what they did. Enough productivity. Not explosive, not necessarily dynamic, but enough to win the game. I thought it was mature from Arsenal.
Would have been a bit of a disaster. Not a disaster, because they would go through it, Arsenal, you would imagine, even with the loss. And although it was at the tail end of last season, I just can't get out of my head that Arsenal couldn't go and beat a team that effectively was the favourite to win the Europa League and dumped out over 2 games by one of the worst Man United sides in living memory. And so I think that kind of puts it in context. Yeah, they got in the Champions League via the league position, and that wasn't the real athletic club in those 2 Man United games, but that's what they put out there. I know they had some injuries, but they couldn't beat them. And so when you're looking at Arsenal and you think, right, come on, you go there, roll your sleeves up, do the basics. Why are you laughing?
No, I'm just laughing there. Come on, roll your sleeves up. You've got to get this done.
No, but I mean, if you watch those 2 games against United last year, I mean, they weren't almost chucked out the club for losing to that bunch of...
mention of United tonight.
Well, I honestly, sitting here last year, thought Athletic Club were going to go and win the Europa League, and should have done. They were the best team still in the competition, and they blew it big still. And that's why I think this competition this year, although Valverde's a very good manager, and what they do in the Basque Country with where they get their players, it's just amazing. But in the Champions League, I think it's going to be very limited. That was exposed last year against weaker teams, and I think it was exposed today against an Arsenal side that were probably in first and at best second gear.
Yeah.
Ruben, I mean, it's eight Premier League wins since you've been here. At some stage, you're going to have to accept that the way you set up your team is just not working. It's not creating enough wins, and people are finding it easy to play against you.
Find it easy to play against, guys. You have I understand that, and I accept. So it's not a record that you should have in Manchester United. There are a lot of things that you have no idea what happened during these months, but I accept that. But I'm not going to change. When I want to change my philosophy, I will change. If not, you have to change the man. So and we will talk about that every game that we lose. I don't believe in that in the system or whatever. So I play my way, and I'm going to play my will until I want to change.
How can we not talk about it every game, Robbo? He is refusing to change his principles here. We just heard the journalist there saying it's just the 8 wins in 31 Premier League games. It's the worst start to a season in 33 years, and yet he's not changing anything.
Well, he's not going to change his system. I mean, the personnel he's tried to change on several occasions, and he's mixed it up a little bit, but it's the same old poor football you're seeing from them. I think they have been slightly more constructive, and you can see a pattern of play occasionally in their play this season. But again, if you've got a system and the players aren't particularly, don't suit it, and you get played around far too often, it means you've got to make big decisions as defenders, and they aren't making the right decisions enough. You've not got any patterns of play, real patterns of play, so players are linking up with each other. It just looks dysfunctional. It looks as though it's a team that aren't going to do much better this year than they did last year. And at some point, the manager's going to have to take the blame because they aren't good enough, and he's losing too many matches. And they had a fight against Man City for a little while, but as soon as they went 1-0 down, you knew that Man City were going to win. It's just not good enough, and he's going to have to go at some point.
Oh, we keep talking about it. There's going to be big questions asked, surely, if they lose to Chelsea next week.
Oh, absolutely. But how can you go out... he must have been part of the recruitment, although they have people doing that now. We discussed this a little bit yesterday, Bruno Fernandes' positioning. Bruno Fernandes, I'm repeating yesterday's show here, actually, but for the conversation, Bruno Fernandes, when he plays for Portugal, plays further forward in the number 10 role with 2 midfielders behind him, the PSG boys, because he's not only one of Portugal's most creative players, but he's Manchester United's most creative player. He's the player that will score a great goal around the box. He's a player that will pick a pass. He's a player that will deliver a cross. I don't want him 50 yards from goal, because he's having to play beside Ugarte or Casemiro because they didn't buy a couple of holding midfielders because they went out and bought Cunha and Mbemo. Forget Sesko. They bought Cunha and Mbemo. And so they've got two players there that Fernandes should be playing in one of those positions, but he's having to move back because they've bought these two and they've got nobody else here. How can you go out in the summer and buy Cunha and Mbemo before you buy two solid midfielders when you know your midfield is a massive problem? An absolutely huge problem. You've got Ugate's come in from PSG and he's been hopeless. You've got Casemiro, who's been one of the best in the business, but he can't do it anymore. And yet you go out and you buy attacking players. And then you take your most attacking player and you move him back into a position that he's really not comfortable with. Yeah, he'll get on the ball, but he's not really good at making challenges. He's not really good at tracking runs because that's not his game. It's absolutely bonkers. It's absolutely nuts that this club have gone this summer and thought, oh, we'll just have better players in the forward position, that will get us goals, and we'll ignore the middle of the park. And we all know that when you ignore the middle of the park and teams, as Robbo said, play around you, you don't have legs in there, you don't have people that can win the ball and pass the ball properly, then even the weaker teams in the Premier League will find a way. And it just beggars, before we even get to the manager not changing system and talking about systems, that itself, that reality of how they have tried to construct this summer's transfer activity is absolutely nuts.
Now, you just said that you don't want Bruno Fernandes 50 yards away from goal. He doesn't want to be 50 yards away from goal. You just mentioned structure there as well. Structurally speaking, there's a coaching decision made by Ruben Amorim ahead of the Manchester derby, ahead of playing against Manchester City, whose strength under Pep Guardiola has always been the quality of play they have in the middle third, in the central area of the field. And by design, Ruben Amorim decides we're going to have Bruno Fernandes defending alongside Ugarte against 4 Manchester City players, against 5 Manchester City players. And even Doku at one point sort of tucked in an inside position as well and made himself available in an inside position. That's where the first goal from Erling Haaland comes. You don't have the numbers. In your initial structure, in your initial game plan, you were already given an advantage to Manchester City. So never mind when they play against lesser opposition, which you just mentioned, they can get broken through all the time. Imagine Manchester City, whose strength under Pep Guardiola, as I just mentioned, tends to be that area of the field. It was never going to work. And the fact that a manager then comes out and says, well, I'm not going to change it. Well, then you're not seeing it. You're not processing information. You're seeing your team being broken through, and you are not making the adjustments necessary to stop that from happening, which by definition is the job of a manager.
Robbo, let's imagine that Manchester United bring you in as a consultant. What are you doing? Are you sticking with Ruben Amorim, or are you letting him go?
I think you'd have to let him go because, as he's just said, I'm not going to change what I'm going to do. This is my philosophy. This is what I've always done, and this is what I'm going to carry on doing. If you're being unsuccessful, you can't carry on doing that. You know, as a coach, you have a philosophy, you have a style of play, and if after 5 or 6, 8, maybe 8 games from last year, you start to think, well, this isn't working for me. With these players, it's not working for me. I'm not getting the best out of this. It's not happening. So I'm going to have to change 1 or 2 things to try and get to win football games. You can't just say my philosophy's eventually going to win games, because at the moment it's not. So you'd have to go in and say, right, they need a new manager because this one isn't going to be successful.
He won't change because he got himself down that rabbit hole very early on where if he ever was to change, the journalists would all run into the room and go, you said you'd never change. And so he's gone down that hole and he just continues to go down further, that I'm not going to change. But I thought it was quite arrogant that when he was asked about it being easy for his teams to be, for teams to play against his Man United side, and it was too easy to get at them. And he kind of laughed and said, well, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. United fans don't care what's going on behind the scenes. What's gone on has gone on. That's kind of recent history. What they want to see is what he can do about it with what he's got. They have better players than last year. I talked about the midfield, right, and that being a problem. And it is. but they still have better players in the forward positions. So technically they should still be a better side, even if there's still issues in the middle of the park and they're getting outplayed in there. They still have some better numbers around, but Rob said slightly. It has been slightly better on the ball, but I mean we're really, micromanaging this situation here. So I think he's got the Chelsea game. Obviously, if that's a narrow defeat or a draw, hell, they might win it. I don't know, unlikely. But I think he's got that and one more. I think if there's two,
Brentford and Sunderland before the break.
I think if there's 2 defeats, if you lose to Chelsea, I think you may get away from that unless it's a drubbing. But Brentford, with all the players that they've lost, and Sunderland, a team that was recently promoted, I don't think they're survivable for him. And rightly so if that was the case, bearing in mind the start they've had to this season and his persistence with just doing the same thing week in, week out.
Yeah, we'll probably be having the same discussion week in, week out with Ruben Amorim. Meanwhile, Liverpool manager Arne has responded to some of the criticism that's been directed at Florian Wirtz so far this season.
There's so much focus on Florian, but the ones that have stayed behind, still in the team, haven't scored 4 goals or 12 assists as well. So he's been part of a team, Florian, that is on top of the league, that won 4 games. He's part of the team that won against Newcastle, that won against Arsenal, where the team of last season didn't win away at Newcastle, didn't win at home against Arsenal. So it's the way you want to look at it. Yes, he hasn't scored 4 goals or 12 assists in the first 4 games, but for me that's down to the quality we've faced, and he's part of a team that's number 1 in the league at the moment.
What's the way that you are looking at it, Stuart Robson?
I mean, he's a very good player. We saw that when he was playing in the Bundesliga. He was very clever in tight areas. At the moment, he's not playing at his best. I mean, when you go to a new club, sometimes it does take a little time to settle in. He might feel under pressure because he's such a big signing, but it's not quite working for him at the moment. It's going to be a big game in the Champions League this week because he's going to have to play against a team where they are going to be compact, they are going to be narrow, and he's the player that's got to pick out those passes. He's got to manipulate the ball and find that extra bit of space, play his little 1-2s. So he's a player that can do it, and I'm sure what he needs is one good game, an outstanding game where he maybe scores a couple of goals, creates a chance or 2 for other people, and he'll relax more, the crowd will relax more, and so will the press. He's a fraction away from being a top-class player, no doubt about it.
Is there a point from Arne in the fact that he is saying it's not like anybody's been shining so far, but we're still, as a team, getting these results and not singling him out right now?
Well, he is factually correct in what he's saying, and I think when you go to a new club, it's not a guarantee that you're just going to hit the ground running, and when that's the case, you're changing country and club, and so that's it's a big move for people. Again, you look behind the scenes, I don't know what his family situation is, but he may have a family, he may have some young kids. So you're moving everybody in, and it's an upheaval. It's part of the job. We've all done it. But sometimes you don't know how it affects players differently. It takes them a little bit longer. And what you want when it is that scenario is exactly what Arne Slot said, is 4 wins out of 4. Because the questions are diminished slightly. They're still there, but they're not. If Liverpool had 2 wins out of 4, then the Florian Wirtz questions were becoming a lot stronger. It's a little bit like Mbappe because, Florian Wirtz has been a big star, an expensive star coming to Liverpool. But when Mbappe goes to Real Madrid and it's a bit of a struggle at the start, there's more questions. Well, there's more questions because it's Real Madrid, but there's more questions because Barcelona are flying. And so, if Kylian Mbappe had come in and it's win, and he's not playing great, he's getting the odd goal, it's a little easier. And I think for Florian Wirtz, it's the same. Liverpool haven't they've not played anyone near as well as last season thus far. There's been a change in shape, there's been a change at fullbacks, but they've scratched out the victories, and that gives your newbies time to fit in and find their feet. So that makes it a lot easier for a new player coming in.
What stood out to you, LA, from seeing him in Germany on the weekly to now?
Well, the guy just mentioned different club, different league, different country, and all those things, right? Different position. He's in a different position on the field. He's being asked to do something different than what he was at Bayer Leverkusen. He's given more responsibility to go and drift into the midfield, whereas Under Xabi Alonso at Bayer Leverkusen, he had freedom to go and find the game however he wanted and however he felt it at the time. Sometimes he would be in wide areas and come off the line. Sometimes he would be underneath. Sometimes he would appear in the midfield because he chose to do so, not because positionally he is being asked to do that. I'm not as negative on Florian Wirtz as most people are. I actually think that against Burnley, you started to see some flashes of the things that he's capable of doing. It didn't quite end up in a goal. It didn't quite end up in an assist. But the movement was a whole lot better than it has been in the earlier part of the season, in the first couple of games. So I'm thinking Florian Wirtz is starting to get there. Patience. And when can you be patient? When the team is winning. Now, if you had gone off to a terrible start, then maybe you make different decisions. But at this point, the team is winning. He seems to be trending slightly. Let's not get crazy. Slightly. But he needs to be in a position where he is given the freedom to go find the game and feel the game. I'm certain that that's not the role he has right now at Liverpool. And if indeed his performances are going to change and going to be compared to what he did at Bayer Leverkusen, he has to have that similar role. He doesn't have that yet.
Just quickly on him. Again, there's a pressure on him. I think he's the most expensive transfer. And I've said this before. We've all seen him many times playing for Bayer Leverkusen in Germany. We all know, everybody on this show tonight knows how good a player he is. Liverpool fans do not. Most of them will not. I've said it before. Most of them have got the Premier League blinkers on. It's all they see. And so they're looking at it, and they're okay with it, I'm sure, at the moment. But they're sitting saying, well, I know he's an expensive player, but where's this sort of superstar? And so that adds a pressure. Because we all know, we've seen it, him and Musiala. Some of the things they've done in the Bundesliga has been amazing. But if you're a Liverpool fan and you're sitting watching it and you're at the game, you're waiting for it. And I think that also can sometimes play in a player's mind as well. So I think from that perspective, we know the quality that he's got, but I think the paying public that go to Anfield are still waiting to see this little genius that we know produced so well in Germany. And it'll probably happen. It will probably happen. But he won't be the first player to have this big price tag that hasn't been able to do it in another league and in another country. I would be surprised if that's the case, but you can't rule it out.
I define him as in the best way possible, as a punk in Germany and with Bayer Leverkusen, in the way that he played. And with that sort of bravado and confidence, and off the script. He's playing very much on the script right now, and by the script of Liverpool. If he's going to be successful, he's got to get back to what makes him great. And what makes him great is going off script, showing that attitude, showing that punk with the ball that has the confidence to try different things. He hasn't quite yet done that, and maybe it's because he doesn't have the confidence to do it. Maybe because he's trying to get his feet under him. It hasn't quite happened. But if that does come out, if he plays off the script, we're going to see the best version of Florian Wirtz.
Maybe it's coming in the Champions League. More Champions League games coming up over the next 2 days in this opening stages to the league phase. Liverpool will be up against Atleti.
We know what games are on the screen on the other room.
Yes, lots of those.
The two at the top, for starters.
Bayern will be up against Chelsea. And what are you expecting from this game, Robbo? Bayern-Chelsea?
Well, Bayern have got off to a good start in their league. They're in the Bundesliga. They play some exciting football. I mean, they've got an injury to Upamecano. They'll try and dominate the game. But I've been quite impressed with Chelsea. I think Chelsea will have their best team available. They didn't play all their best players at the weekend against Brentford. Cole Palmer coming back into the side will be a great boost for them from the start of the game. I think they'll play with their normal wide players rather than the ones they used against Brentford. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think Bayern will dominate possession, but on the counter-attack, Chelsea could cause 1 or 2 problems. I think it's going to be tight.
OK, so that was what's coming up tomorrow. We do have a show tomorrow, of course. We've got a show every single day.
You sound surprised.
we do have, I think, a show tomorrow.
We've got 2 more days of Champions League, so it's thrown me a little bit. But yes, Alexis will be with you tomorrow to take you through all of those games, and we'll be back with you on Thursday. In case you were wondering, the printer's still not working here in the studio.
Oh, no.
But I have been emailed the questions for extra time.
I don't think anybody was wondering.
Robbo, what?
I've never known how a printer can hold up a show.
2 printers. We have 2 printers.
Yeah. Luckily, we've had people running in the notes that we need. All right. Vini still hasn't done a full 90 yet this season. Will he start to feel overshadowed by Kylian Mbappe, considering his game time and form? Ali?
I think that's already happened. I think we're seeing Kylian Mbappe has become the guy at Real Madrid, which was always going to happen eventually. And I think it's something that Craig mentioned in the show, that at one point Vini was running away with being the guy at Real Madrid. And this has happened. Mbappe was down here, Vini was here, and now Mbappe, he's the reference point. And until Vini doesn't accept what his role is under Xabi Alonso, doesn't understand it, and doesn't follow through with the directions given by Xabi Alonso, he's going to be in this sort of cold, hot, hot, cold, cold, hot with Xabi Alonso in terms of how much he plays, how long he plays, and whether he comes off the bench or whether he starts matches.
All right.
You know what was more interesting than the printer? Because a printer's not very exciting, is it? Was, as predicted, Robbo's background has gone.
Yes.
But we soldiered on. You probably never noticed during the show.
Okay.
Some people may have, but he tried a few different ones, didn't he, before the show?
And we settle on this one?
No.
Well, that's actually move aside, Robbo, and show them what's behind you. No images.
But, so what happened?
Oh, dear,
He had it all set up.
Well, everything's gone wrong. Let me tell you, everything's gone wrong. I can't see you. I can't see myself. The picture behind's
That's probably a
gone.
good thing.
It's been a complete and utter disaster. The only good thing is, well, I'm not sure that's the right thing for the public. They could still hear me. That's about the only thing that was right.
They can see you too.
The best bit was when it started on a slideshow behind him and he couldn't stop it.
Surely it can't be that difficult.
Let me tell you, I spent 45 minutes with a technician who is very good, setting me up. But unfortunately, everything goes to sleep after about an hour, and that's what's happened.
Remember when he famously needed a software update? Maybe it's that.
But the best part of it is that when our producer or director, I imagine the director was asking him to change the background, Stewie nervously, as he was turning around, said, "Why are you asking me to do this? If we change it now, it's not coming back." And sure enough,
he was right.
Heroes of TV.
Well, given that we can hear you, Stuart, and can see you, you
Yes.
can answer the next question. Juventus this year reminds me of Tottenham 2 years ago. Can they sustain playing this wide open?
No, against the poor teams they can, but not against the good teams. You know, there has to be a balance. You've got to be good going forward. Of course, you've got to create chances, which means that sometimes you have to be expansive and you have to make the pitch big, and you get, whether that's be with width or length. But then when you lose the ball, you've got to be narrow again, and you've got to work hard to win it back. If you don't do that, you're going to lose football games. You're going to have very good days, but you're going to have some bad days as well. And if you want to be a team that does really, really well, you have to be good at both sides of the job. And at the moment, I don't think Juventus are.
Craig, considering Arsenal's brilliant defensive form so far this season, having only conceded 1 goal across all competitions, what's the percentage chance they break Chelsea's record of 15 goals conceded in a single league season? Their depth must give them a realistic chance.
I don't think so. What are you laughing at?
how intent you were listening to the question.
Stat attack. This is a bit of a stat attack. But anyway, I suppose overall we're talking Arsenal's defence and their depth this season.
Well, it's not really much of a stat attack. I mean, you've got to beat 15. No, I don't think so. I think that you could argue their defensive unit is better than Liverpool's because it's been working together more. Liverpool's has changed, and it's still a work in motion. You know, think about Kerkez and Frimpong and the full-back positions. Whereas Arsenal, could be Lewis Skelly, it's Calafiori at the moment. Hurricane Timber's a really strong player. Obviously, Saliba's had a little injury problem. Mascara's come in, so they have a good unit and a pretty solid goalkeeper. But that's going to be going some 15 goals. So no, I don't think so.
Next question, Robbo. Seeing as though we've talked about this in the show, for all, it's fine to say sack the manager, but since Sir Alex Ferguson, they tried one who knows the league, Moyes, a proven
No, it's
Louis
gone.
van Gaal.
It's gone.
Well, we've got
No, the whole thing is gone.
An authoritarian Jose, one that knows the club. And
Oh,
all
now
they
we're getting
want
left. It says behind him. Press the button.
You got to press a button.
Oh no, where's that button? There we go. Hang on.
We got fireworks.
There we
in the
go. There we
background.
go. Is that going on now?
Well, much better now.
kind of like the fireworks. Kind of like the fireworks. Anyway, we're going through all the Manchester United managers since Sir Alex Ferguson here, Robbo, and all the different things that have been tried, including Europe's next big thing, Eric Ten Hag, Amorim. What's left to try?
Well, there aren't too many other managers out there. But you can't keep going along with a manager that says he's not going to change his ways when you can't see any real improvement. You know, it's the same as what Bayer Leverkusen did with Eric Ten Hag. They realised they'd gone down the wrong route and then said, the worst thing we can do is to continue down the wrong route. And I think that's what Manchester United are doing with Ruben Amorim at the moment. He doesn't look like a manager that's going to turn things around for them. So eventually he has to go.
What is left to try
Well,
with Manchester United? Where do you go
no,
next?
it's why just give up. Well, you've always got to think there's a better manager out there that can get more out of the players. And I'm sure there is. Even though it's a far from perfect balanced squad, your job as a manager is to make the most of what you've got. Because that's what everybody else in in all the leagues are doing. Doesn't matter if you're in Spain or Italy or Germany. If you're not the big guns, and they are not at the moment, then you're in with the rest. You're in with the best of the rest. They're not even that, but that's what they're trying to be. And so therefore, every team in every country is trying to get the best out of their team. Well, you take Dortmund, for example. They've been through a few managers recently. They're trying to get back in there. There's multiple teams. Atletico Madrid, they've stuck with their manager, spent a bunch of money, and yet have had their issues at the start of the season. So I think from what you have to ask yourself is, are we getting our bang for our buck? And United are not with this manager. I mean, I don't expect somebody to come in and take them to the promised land. I don't. But I also don't expect them to be sitting just off the relegation zone last year at the end of the season and having the type of start they've had to this season. So results are a big thing, obviously, in football. And if he doesn't get the next couple, he's finished.
Okay, next question, Ale. Is it safe to say Goulart will be back on the bench when Bellingham returns? Ever seen someone so nonchalant for Weah's goal?
Xabi Alonso has made Arda Güler sort of his pet project, and it's something we referenced in the show, and that he's trying to make him into a player who plays from a deeper line of midfield, which is not what he does regularly nor naturally. And while he's able to do a certain job, what ends up happening is you lose the ball in a bad area because he's now in a deeper line. Usually, if you lose it 60, 70 yards away from your goal because you're in an advanced position, you have time to recover. Now, you're receiving the ball 30, 40 yards away from your own goal. When you lose it there, now you're in a situation in which you're creating problems for your own team, and today it ended up in a goal for Marseille. What I would say that was reprehensible about Arda Güler is that when he lost the ball, his first reaction was to walk, and then a slow jog. That's the part that if I were Xabi Alonso, I would say, okay, listen, I'm banking on you here, and I think you're a player that can do this job, but you cannot lose the ball there. But to answer the question, I've taken the cynic route. To answer the question, when Bellingham comes back, somebody's got to sit down, and the first one that seems lined up to sit down would be Arda Güler or Mastantuono on the other side. And if Xabi Alonso listens to me and puts a fourth midfielder in, which would be Jude Bellingham, then Mastantuono would have to come off the field.
We need a substitution in the studio for our printer. We've got to end it there. Thank you so much for sending in your questions. Robbo, thanks for sticking with it.
Professional.
And your lovely background.
Yeah.
We'll be back tomorrow on ESPN FC.
Pleasure, always enjoyable.